In the world of archery, the name Byron Ferguson conjures up images of impossible feats with a simple longbow and the highest standard of archery excellence. Byron's amazing tricks with the bow and arrow are featured on the outdoor channels Shooting USA, American Shooter, and Impossible Shots. As an archer, his book, Become the Arrow, was invaluable to me. Byron Ferguson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. How's everybody up north?
Good. How's the rut treating you?
So far, not so good.
No?
Well, I just got it to camp yesterday afternoon, just in time for the rain to start.
Uh-oh.
And it's still raining, so I'm sitting here in the camper. Actually, one of my conversations years ago with Mr. Fred Bear, the subject of bow hunting came up, and hunting in the rain. And he looked at me and said, well, Byron, I'll just tell you, bow hunting in the rain is nothing but a fool's folly. I have tried to live by that.
Well, at least you're in camp enjoying time with friends and family. I've seen the behavior of deer when it rains. I actually had a quick downfall come. This was a couple years ago. I had a nice 6-pointer coming in right underneath my tree stand, and as soon as it starts raining, they hit the dirt, and they won't move. You know?
Well, what's going on here is the front is sitting right on top of us. So deer tend to move, before and after a front, but when it's sitting on top of you, they just hunker down.
Where are you hunting at?
I'm in West Tennessee right now.
Oh, beautiful. Greatest people on earth in Tennessee.
It's a great state. I live in North Alabama, but I can't afford to hunt Alabama anymore. It's got too expensive. So
yeah, I know how that
works. I moved
works.
here to West Tennessee.
There you go. Well, you were a young boy when you first became enchanted by archery. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, what got me into archery in the first place was bow hunting. I wanted a bow when I found out I could hunt white-tailed deer a whole month earlier with bow and arrow than I could with a gun. But when I asked my dad to buy me a bow to go hunt deer, he kind of laughed at me and said, yeah, right, that's going to happen. So I had to get a job as a brick mason's helper one summer to earn the money to buy my first bow. And ordered it from the Western Auto Store there in my hometown of Hartselle, Alabama. And by the way, they made me pay for it in full up front before they would order it.
There you go.
So, but anyway, I got my first bow, and the guy I got it from told me to put me a paper plate on a bale of hay for a target. And after the first afternoon, I thought, pie plate in my foot, I can't hit the bale of hay, much less a pie plate.
Right? Was that a recurve bow?
Yes, that was a Browning Wasp recurve with my very first bow.
Look at that. You still have that?
I don't know what happened to it. I can't find the bow. That's been like 100 years ago. So.
Well, here we go. So Byron starts out, you can't hit the side of a barn, you're having all this difficulty, and now you can hit pretty much anything. When did you start trick shooting?
Let me think, around 1980, I guess it was. By now I had become somewhat proficient with bow and arrow. Mm-hmm. And I had bought a longbow because of my idol, Mr. Howard Hill, shot longbows. So a friend of mine and I were scouting a piece of property in Alabama. We were thinking about leasing for bow hunting, and it was a real sandy road. It was in South Alabama, so the road was real sandy. And on the way back to the truck, there was a rattlesnake crawling across the road. And my buddy, old Jimmy Lake, was just scared to death of snakes. Yeah. And I had my longbow, with a back quiver full of blunt-tipped arrows. I drew an arrow and shot the snake through the head. Jimmy thought I'd saved his life because I shot the snake, and it was a pretty good shot because the snake was crawling, the head weaving back and forth. So Jimmy was impressed, and he asked me to perform at his bow hunting jamboree. There it is at his bow shop. And I said, sure, why not? It sounded like fun. So I went and shot for the guys down there, and I did a few shots, aerial targets, and ended up shooting a 25-cent piece out of the air. And one of the guys in the audience happened to be a manufacturer's rep, and he thought that was the greatest thing he'd ever witnessed, so he was telling everybody about what he'd seen me do. And not too long after that, a guy from up not too far from you, Kaz, up at Buck Rub Archery there in Wisconsin, called me and asked me to come and do a show at his jamboree, and he offered to give me money. And I thought, you're going to pay me to shoot the bow? Sign me up, Bubba, I'm there.
Right.
So that's what got it all started.
Well, you mentioned that you went to the longbow because of your affinity for Howard Hill, but is there other reasons why you prefer the longbow over the recurve?
Well, the very first deer I ever shot at with a longbow, was a very difficult shot. It was a small buck, and he was about 35 yards from me, and I was stooped over with a downfall across my back, and so I had to hold the bow horizontal to the ground, and I made the shot and just drilled the deer with it. And I thought, well, my goodness, if I ever get a decent shot at one, I shouldn't have any trouble. This was, after I'd missed several deer with the recurve.
Mm-hmm.
So I started hunting with the longbow, and I've never looked back. It's just just fell in love with it. Always been good to me.
Yeah, and me too. I shoot both recurves and longbows and compounds, but I find that the longbow is the easiest for me to point and shoot. A lot of guys disagree, and they think it's just the opposite, that a recurve is easier to shoot. But for me, there's a point and shoot ability that comes with the longbow that you don't find with any other type of equipment.
Well, that's true, and the biggest thing is what I found is with a recurve bow, if you're standing on a line shooting at a stationary target and you give the guy with the recurve the opportunity to take the perfect archer stance, 9 times out of 10, he's going to beat you. But if you do a 3D course where you have to put your foot against a peg and reach out around a tree or stoop down and shoot on your limb, then 9 times out of 10, you're going to beat the recurve.
There you go. Byron Ferguson with us, and we are talking all things Byron Ferguson. Your shots are just uncanny. How do you conceive the trick shots that you perform? Are they suggested to you, or do you just come up with them?
Well, the shots that I did this year on the Impossible Shots were all written in by viewers.
Oh, boy.
Some of them I thought was impossible, but we ended up being able to accomplish them. The hardest one this season for me to accomplish was the shooting a BB off the top of a golf tee.
I saw that.
Without knocking the golf tee over. I figured I could do it, but, I thought that, I'm going to knock the golf tee over. But,
right. Amazing
it
stuff.
It happened. What can I say?
What's the one shot that you haven't mastered yet?
Shooting a elk. I haven't got that one down yet.
That's a little bit bigger than a BB, though, so you got that going for you.
Yeah, I tell people I am snake bit when it comes to hunting elk. I just cannot get a shot at one of those things.
What did you glean from the shooting styles of Howard Hill, Fred Bear, Ben Pearson, and the other old-time greats?
Well, actually, my shooting style that I have developed comes directly from Howard Hill. He called it the split vision method of aiming, which we call today, in modern archers, call it gap shooting, where you're using the tip of the arrow as a sight pin. But I learned just pretty much by accident that if I focused more on the target, less on the arrow, then I became more accurate with it. In other words, gap shooting, you split your concentration about 50-50, 50% on target, 50% on the tip of the arrow. I shoot 90-10, 90% on target, only 10% on the arrow.
Right, and this is described,
rely
of course.
on form.
Yeah, you rely on your form, and this is described in your book, Become the Arrow, which it's just an invaluable item for any archer to have that wants to shoot instinctively.
Thank you.
When you wrote it, did you have to edit it down? Was there stuff that you left out, or because it's pretty to the point?
Well, fortunately, I had a great guy help me with it, Mr. Glenn Helblin from there in Milwaukee. Glenn was the editor at the time for Archery World magazine, and he would more or less interview me and kept picking it out of me. Just exactly what are you doing, what are you seeing, and then he would ask the question in a different way.
Yeah, right.
So he had the ability to actually get me to describe what I was doing and what I was seeing, and that's how we wrote the book.
I was privileged to see your shooting demonstration at the Illinois Deer Expo in Bloomington a few years back. How many performances do you do a year, Byron?
Oh, probably around anywhere from 120 to 150, depending on the year. With the down economy the last couple of years, we've probably only done about 80. But
a lot of jaws drop.
Well, I'm on the road quite a bit. This season, when I say season, from last January until now, I think we did about 90 shows, and some of those were actually in Europe. I went over and did some shows in Austria.
All right.
So, beautiful place, great people. long way from Alabama.
Yes, indeed. Now, your son makes a bow that you shoot, correct? People can purchase the Byron Ferguson longbow.
Yes, Zachary, my youngest son, makes the bows. He calls them Z-bows. You can see them online at fergusonzbows.com, but you will have to call to order one.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we do that is because the shopping carts online charge you depending on how much money you spend,
Right.
rather than what the actual shipping would be. So we ask people just to call to order, and that way you get the correct price on shipping.
Byron, what's your advice for people looking to get started shooting the longbow or recurve?
Well, the first thing, if they're already involved in archery, say they're already shooting a compound bow, the first thing I would recommend is take the sights off. Learn to shoot that bow without sights. You'll find it to be much easier to learn because of the mechanical advantage of the compound. That allows you to concentrate more on your technique and less on just having the strength to pull the bow back. Once you've learned that, then it's a relatively simple matter to switch over to the recurve or longbow. As far as actually purchasing a recurve or longbow, what I tell everybody is, don't have one custom made, because the bowyer cannot do you a decent job. The bow should be designed to fit you and your shooting style.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not currently shooting one, then you don't have a style to fit. So you're just getting a generic bow. What I recommend people do is, for their very first bow, is go to an archery tournament, find a traditional archery tournament, and just to go and attend the tournament. And there's always a ton of people there with used bows that they want to sell. Either they're too strong for them, or they're too weak for them, or some guys just think they got to have a new bow every year,
Mm-hmm.
so they want to sell their old bow. And you can get a really good deal on those bows. I've seen bows at archery tournaments that guys paid $500-$600 for $50 to $100.
Yeah, I have too. I snatch them up too. I just picked up a Martin takedown, a Hatfield takedown, for a couple $100. So that's an $800 bow. You know.
I see that pretty regularly, actually.
Yeah, well, it's good for guys like us. So I use my stuff forever, and but I like those guys that have to have the new toy syndrome every year, because I always pick up their stuff at a quarter of the price they paid for it. Byron Ferguson.
Well,
huh?
So we're always looking for the magic bow.
Yeah, right on.
The magic bow being the one you don't have to try to shoot, just pull it back and turn it loose, and it hits the bullseye.
Well, sometimes watching you, it seems like that. What's your practice regimen like?
I learned from the football teams, actually. Rather than doing a marathon practice session at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, I am up now to do 4 days,
Okay.
like a football team. It does me much more good. I only practice about 30 minutes, and I'll shoot, like I said, for 30 minutes. I don't count the arrows. I only shoot 3 arrows at a time. And then I'll take a break. I'll go do a little work in the office, or do a little video editing, or just goof off, whatever. But I'll do that 4 times a day, and that has really, really helped me much more than doing that one long practice session at the end of the day.
Sure. Because of I've studied muscle memory, and if you practice under fatigue, your muscle memory will be conditioned to make those mistakes over and over.
Exactly.
So yeah, Stay fresh. Well, I can't tell you how much of an honor it is to speak with you. I want people to go to ByronFerguson.com and find out more about this amazing man, and also visit ByronFerguson.com to get DVDs, books, and you got to Become the Arrow. You got to get the Impossible Shot stuff. This will bring not only your understanding, but your appreciation of the great bow and arrow, the simple stick and string, to a new height. Byron, thank you for your inspiration and continued success, my friend.
Thank you, and good luck to everybody this season.